All right. Good morning, good afternoon, wild and well listeners. We are glad that you are here. It's John and Becca with He Said, She Said. There is a giant helicopter. Hopefully, this is not loud. So, welcome. Can you hear it or no?
Barely.
So it's like thunderous loud. Okay. Welcome to Wild and Well Together. Again, glad that you are here. We're glad to be here. This week, we are talking about being versus becoming. This idea of I am versus who I want to be. Rather, I am who I am. And I'd also like to grow into this person and become someone further rendition or evolution of myself. So that's the overall that I have there. John, I do have a very specific coffee question for you. But do you have any other overview before we get into the coffee?
No, I think you teed it up well. I've got a new segment for us to try in a bit, but hit me with a coffee question.
Okay. I tried a pour over this week. I paid the money. Is the taste worth the money differential in your mind? Or did I get hoodwinked into paying a whole lot more for that?
No, that's a good question. Probably not. I mean, I make pour overs at home, so I buy good beans and I make them at home. But if I'm buying the same pour over at a coffee shop, it's like $8 or $9, and it's probably not worth it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I need to when I come to your house, I will try it there because I was I was like, let's try this. John talks about how wonderful these are. Why not? I'm feeling a little like I want to splurge. And it was good. Please hear me. It was even
Yeah.
fantastic. I will say that. It was fantastic. And then I got the bill and I'm like, okay, I'm not suffering for money. And also, that would have reached a little bit deeper in my pockets.
Yeah. Look, if it were 50% more, yes. The pour overs are like 100% more, 150% more. It's so and
Not actually. I'm being a little bit
no,
facetious. But
so seriously though, my great local coffee shop, $4 a cup of coffee. Pour over, $8 or $9. So I buy the beans for 25, which I know is a lot, but I make a pour over at home. It's very good. At there though, I had the same revelation this week actually. I did buy a pour over. I was working from the coffee shop more than I normally do. I bought a pour over the day prior. It had an Americano. And I was like, it's not worth the extra $4. Just go with the drip or the Americano if you're gonna, if you're paying retail, or take
okay.
it home and make a pour over.
All right. That's my thought. So maybe for 2026, I will figure out how to make something at home besides I just do black drip coffee. So I hook up the IV and then we're on our way. But
Yeah,
thank you for sharing that. Me saying it might not be worth it is actually somewhat valid. So
I'm with you. It's a nuanced answer because I'm admittedly a coffee snob, but I also don't think it's worth paying in a coffee shop for the extra.
yeah, I mean, and again, that's their luxury brand. So I'm
Yeah.
fine with that. Makes sense. Support local, all those good things. And probably will not partake in that until I come over to your house. So, okay,
Uh,
now that that's underway, what is your new segment you have for us?
okay. It's called What Are You Playing Chicken With? And it's a dangerous game, okay? It's What Are You Playing Chicken With? This is where we stare down our chores and we wait for someone braver than us to blink. And the question is, which of us is finally going to be the hero and do the dreaded thing? And so I'll go first because I'm introducing this, but I'm curious to hear what you have. I will say that most of the time I'm playing chicken with, it's with my wife and it's something around the house. Okay, it's with Miriam and it's something around the house. This time though, I've been playing chicken with for the past 2 weeks, the obscenely large pile of leaves in my front yard. And just like some background here, Sacramento used to be called the city of trees. There's all sorts of trees. And what's cool is you can pile the leaves in the street and they'll come pick it up every so often. So I've got them piled up and the truck hasn't come. Like it's been probably 2 or 3 weeks. And I should probably put what I can in the bin for them to be taken away. But I'm convinced that it's not worth it. They wouldn't fit. I've tricked myself into thinking that this is the right thing to do. And so I definitely have the biggest pile of leaves on the block. It doesn't look good. And yeah, a bit of laziness coming through there.
And are kids jumping in them? Like, are we utilizing them as a play toy or no? They're just sitting nice and pretty.
I wish I could use that as an excuse, but I can't. They're just sitting there on the street, wasting away.
And what is the next step? How do we mitigate this? Or we wait till that twice a year when that holiday truck comes along and takes up your extras?
Well, now that I've named it, I think the next step is for me to get outside and put leaves in the bin and stop playing chicken with it. So this helps. When you're playing chicken with it, you can just call it, right? Like,
Call it what it is. Yeah.
I'm playing chicken with this. Like this pile of papers, it's been sitting on the counter for a week. I've been playing chicken with. It's the same concept.
Yeah. I
So
like
I'm
this.
curious if you've been playing chicken with anything and with whom you've been playing chicken with.
For sure. I'm gonna take a picture of it and put it up somehow, or at least send it to you and Miriam of what we're playing chicken with right now. I'll get to that in just a second. My dad, and I know you're not retired yet, but maybe again, reach into your the depths of your pockets and say, we're gonna purchase a leaf shredder. It's kind of like a paper shredder. My dad in retirement is like, I worked 45 years in my job. I'm not scooping leaves anymore. I'm done. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
dad, that's your choice. So he bought this leaf. I don't know what the cost. It might be cheap, but he bought this leaf shredder. And so he literally sucks up leaves like a blower, but the inverse of it.
yeah.
And it puts it into dust equivalent. And
Wow.
so heads up, that might be your new answer is instead of having 15 bags, his was literally a bag and a half. It would have been 15 plus bags and it's a bag and a half. So
Listen, I would pay your dad for a Saturday morning with that thing at his that sounds amazing, okay? That is a piece of equipment that I would pay to use just for fun.
yeah, there
If
you
I had
go.
one of those, there's no pile of leaves, I can guarantee you.
Marcus thought it was epic that exists. So that could be an option for you. As far as playing chicken, I will send a photo of this because it's really quite sad because both of us are highly competent people, as you and your wife are. Our recycle bin is now overflowing and it is
Yep.
now up on top of the counter in our laundry room where we need to then take the boxes, the Amazons, the drinks, all the things and go ahead and just move them 6 feet, 10 feet outside. But
Yeah.
it feels cold right now. And that's a big of enough excuse for the last week that we've let our pile continue to grow into more of a tree that's like sprouting like this.
This is all too real. Can I project for a second?
Please.
And it's a question to you.
Okay.
Do
Okay.
you or don't you open an Amazon box, take the thing out, like throw it in the garage, close the door, and let Nick take care of it?
He listens to this. He'll listen to this tomorrow
You just
or
feel the
whenever he
feminism
listens.
leaving your body going, I can't break that box down.
Yeah. And I'm married to a better man than I am woman. And let's call it what it is. He does it most of the time. I hold the fort down a lot, but he's a good man. And yeah, but I do.
Yeah,
I set it there and then I'm like, bye. Or I play Tetris and I'm like, oh, I don't have to go out in
yeah.
the cold yet. Let me try and stick 17 different boxes. We have some wheat thins. We have a box
Mhm.
of probably like, what are those called? They're like kids packet pouches. Like we have a box
Yeah,
of that. Lots of Costco things. Costco loves boxes. We love Costco. Therefore, we have lots of boxes.
yeah.
So ours are like Tetris in how many can we fold and crumple and crush to make happen?
Yeah, and you say, Look at that. Look at that neat little pile that I've left for Nick." This
Yeah.
I get that Mary leaves me the same one.
And then I think maybe one day we'll make like a craft out of some of these.
Yeah. Yeah,
In
that's
marriage, 10 years in, and having kids for 5 years now, maybe 5 times have we used an excess box as
it doesn't
so do you feel
happen.
seen or do you feel
feel
more
I feel
frustrated
so
because
seen. I'll go one more. Here's what I've tried to do to like overcome this is I bought like a pack of box cutters and they're just all over the house in places that only adults can get to. So that you open a box, guess what? There's a box cutter within about 15 feet from you in a drawer somewhere. You can break it down. Has this helped? No. The answer is
there
absolutely
we
not.
or maybe your wife is just saying, "Babe, I saw that you put them everywhere. I'm so appreciative of you.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'll set this box here for you." And then you have one right there for you to do.
Look, if I'm being real, this is the tax I will happily pay relative to the mental the mental burden that she carries for the family. So let's just call balls and strikes here.
Yeah, call it what it is.
Yeah.
Being versus becoming. The pile of I'm a pile person, I'll call it what it is. I'm the one who cleans, I don't like dirty. However, piles I'm guilty of. So pile of recyclables, shout out to recycling. That's still a thing. We'll get them in the bin by tomorrow because that's when it goes out. But I'm guilty of that. And so my being is that I'm guilty of doing that. Where I could grow in my relationship for Nick and with recycling is to not leave piles and let it turn into some sort of abstract artwork in our laundry room.
Yeah. And like I think I'm just gonna turn on the Home Depot music and get out there and knock out this pile of leaves. Gonna go into the bin. It's the
Go do
new.
a little bit of woodworking so you smell the beautiful aroma of wood in Home Depot, and then go ahead and just suck those leaves up.
Yeah. I am self-actualized. If I shredder, that's the goal.
All right, there you go. We will know that you have reached it. All right, excuse me, getting over a cold. Let's get into this then. I have a question, a very poignant question for men. Do you think, and we can discuss women and men in general humanness, do you think men are addicted to self improvement in your mind?
I think if we aren't, we are trained culturally with all the things around us to tend toward it. You know, like
Mhm.
there's an aspirational male figure, looks different for a lot of people, but these days it's different than when we were kids. You know, it involves the habits that we stick to every single day. It involves success. It involves progression in all facets of our lives. And if we aren't addicted, we can almost feel like there's something wrong with us, that we aren't striving in every part of our life every day to get better.
And I'd say for women too, that's highly relatable where whether it's by beauty, whether it's by a set standards of physique, whether it's by brilliance, right? Where there's so many women that are just powerhouses now. And that is fun compared to when we were growing up. There were the few that had that seat at the table, but now there's many. But across the board, I would say that. And I don't think that that's wrong. Having role models or even people who are modeling how to do life well or what appears to be well is a great thing. I think the piece of it is, am I able to separate myself enough to say I'm content with where I am now? That my worth, I believe in my worth now, or that my worth does not equate to what I will become. I currently am worthy of the life I'm living now. And also, I can strive to continue to become healthier, wealthier, whatever it may be. And that's not a bad thing. That's actually a good thing. That's progress. But I wonder because men have to carry that weight more silently. And I think there's this pressure that I don't understand or that I'm unaware of, and so that's my curiosity of, like, can men sit and not be called lazy? Can men
Yeah.
find rest and not be considered sluggards? As women can sit and chat and people are like, "Oh, yeah, they're connecting." Men sit and chat or they, take a seat and they're like, "Oh, that he's a bum." What are your thoughts on that?
Well, look, I think this came up so a few weeks ago when we were talking about this topic is upcoming, you mentioned defining self-worth through productivity. And having not even heard that concept really before, it was like a light bulb, like, oh, absolutely I do that. And so if you ask me, am I addicted to it? I didn't even know that I am, but I absolutely tend toward it. And then it leads to maybe burnout. It does lead to times of idleness, but I leave that time of idleness a lot of the time feeling guilty, right? Like there's a
Mhm.
guilt associated with taking reprieve or whatever that may be. And so I think this is for myself, this is very real. I also think I want to come back to like the idea of culturally this is reinforced, whether that's in movies, television growing up, now in social media. Certainly at work, there's an expectation to get better and better as you go along. Parenting, what can be earnest desire to be a better parent, can, if you go down this rabbit hole, turns into another area to strive for perfection as opposed to learning yourself.
Mm.
So I think it's very real.
I know it's not bad to be productive. In fact, it's a really healthy thing and we need contributing members of society and we have that need consistently and it will be like that's how the world operates. And so what is that balance of saying, yes, I'm going to go to work or I'm going to be creative or I'm going to be curious and cultivate and create and all those things build, right? We've talked about you being a builder from
Mhm.
teeny tiny all the way through now being fulfilled by that. What is the separation, the reason, the impetus for then saying, and I can also fish or rest or be fully present with my kids? What is that? What's that journey? What's that? I can't think of the word right now to get from constantly productivity, like finding worth there and saying, whether I'm fishing, whether I'm sitting with my kids, whether I'm working, I am worthy of the life that I'm living.
I think you're asking what is the cadence and what's the right balance of that?
Okay.
Is that fair enough?
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
I should say I don't have the answer that I've lived out and like, here we go, this is it. I want to take it back to faith and spirituality though. What across religions, this topic has been addressed for thousands of years. It's called Sabbath. And
Yeah.
depending on the day that of your religion that you participate in Sabbath, it exists for a reason. So call it 1 in 7, whatever that
Yeah.
percentage is. And I think maybe very recently, I'm coming around to the idea of truly resting. It doesn't always happen on a Sunday, more towards Sunday, but on a Saturday, but actually having a day of rest and the one per week. It's really good because what I've found is that if I have like a fun weekend and like either we're gone or it's all John's hobbies. It's John's big weekend out.
Yeah.
I get into the week, I'm behind, I maybe feel rested, but I'm also then have maybe neglected the things that I need to do to be effective and meet the needs of myself or people around me. And it's like, But when I have a day of rest and a day of all the other things that can happen on a weekend, whether it's child obligations or that's things around the house, there's this balance as I go into the week that I am rested and also able to get to what I needed to get to.
It gives you that energy again, like
Yeah.
almost like a
So that's the
battery
answer I'm
recharge.
defaulting to because this is thousands of years of knowledge that have been put to work. But how do we account for this in the modern era? It's a good
We do.
question. Yeah.
No. Like, you saying that, and we haven't prepped this for those of you listening. We do our work and we do our research. However, this Sabbath was not something that was brought up during this, and so I appreciate you sharing that because that's something that Nick and I are thinking through extensively of what does a digital Sabbath look like. And I think
Mm,
what it's going to be, and the invite will be for anyone to join us, is the last day of the month and the first 2 days of the new month. We are disconnected from our phone, from anything outside of communication, text or phone calls, but everything else is removed for 72 hours. That way we can have a digital Sabbath.
yeah.
Because the fact that I don't know the last time that I've gone 72 hours without my phone attached to me, that's an addiction, right? And
Yep.
so when I asked you, like, what are some addictions for you? I think about that and I'm like, what other things do I use? And this is not shame based for how we use our phones. Technology is so cool. We get to talk to people across the world. We don't have to live right next to people. Like, work can be done from home, which can be a beautiful thing. So I'm not saying that it's all negative. However, it's that relationship, that balance that you were talking about, that the cadence of it. And so with you saying Sabbath, for Nick and I, that's one thing where a digital Sabbath is what 2026 looks like it's going to build out, is we're going to say, okay, the last day of the current month and then the first 2 days of the new month to say 72 hours. Why do I need to check my emails on my phone for 72 hours? I don't actually. Or
Yeah.
what, like, I think it's just doing it, right? Like, people for the last thousands of years have just done it because they said this is worth the practice. This is worth it. Like, easily they could go out and till their fields and that would have been really productive. However, they
Yeah.
said, I'm going to sit for 72 or I'm going to sit for 24 hours, right? Like, 24 hours is a great one. And I think the cool part, or what I'm coming to find power in, is if it's a universal practice. And so for you saying spirituality and religion, like, we look across the board, and whether it's in Asia, in Eastern Europe, or Middle East, and then Central South America, Africa, wherever it may be, religions and spirituality in each of those places do some sort of Sabbath and rest. And so, like, I love that. I'm like, okay, how are we going to build this into Wild and Well together now? Because I think that that is the most basic answer, or the primal answer to this question.
And look, maybe this is probably a byproduct of our instinct, our animalistic instinct is striving towards becoming the next
Yeah,
version of
survival.
ourselves, right? And so this is the prefrontal cortex, and either that, if you want to believe just in neuroscience or in faith, a lightning bolt hit someone at some point and said, take a day of rest, take a step off the path of becoming who you're going to be, and actually you'll probably go a little bit faster to where you want to be. Because I think this is like the instinct is just do more, just do more, just do more. It's either get to the opportunity or make ourselves better, cover this weakness, and some sort of reprieve. And this is, we've talked about becoming versus being. This has quickly gone back to our conversation on rituals, rhythms and
Mhm.
rituals, right? But I think that it is in our nature to want to get better. I think that we shouldn't walk away from that as a bad thing. I think we can look at the society around us and look at the roofs of our head, which is a byproduct of ourselves doing that, people around us doing that, but also there have been times in my life where I put disproportionate value on that, without a doubt.
That's that cadence and balance that you were talking about, of how do we prepare? How do we do life that is healthy? And when can we tap out and say enough is enough for now?
Yeah.
And then secondarily, I'll come back to this because I want people to hear this over and over again, that our worth is not equated to our productivity. Because what happens when we get the gift of retirement? What happens when we get the gift of a Sabbath? When we choose to cultivate rest over the holidays? Talk about high stimulation. We're in the holidays right now. And what does that look like to say, hey, instead of us eating like crazy amounts of food or going shopping or going from this party to that party and wearing the coolest Christmas sweaters or ugliest or whatever, we say, like, hey, let's just kick it at home, or let's just go for a walk, or let's go play on the playground, or have a dance party at home, or whatever it may be, but something that's calming to the spirit rather than next thing after next thing after next thing, which is okay. But it gets into those rituals of, am I content enough with who I am now while still knowing I need to become my next evolution of who I am in my 40s, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Which, who will that be? We shall see. But
I have a somewhat recent experience of just the contrast of being in doing mode, which is
mhm,
paternity leave, and the where my mind went to and the things that I did on paternity leave paternity leave when I had, I think, 2 months this time to just be and not be in the daily habit of all the things that I do, right? And my mind went really cool places. I, built a shed, did some other really fulfilling things, and also just relaxed, just was present with my newborn. And I think what I come back to is that I actually feel like the progression to becoming it goes faster with some reprieve,
Mm.
right? Like I have to do it, otherwise they start running the race slower. It's like walking a little bit of a marathon and not trying to run the whole thing. They
Mm.
say first marathon, first half marathon. Don't try to, if you're not comfortable with it, don't run the whole thing. Walk some of it. Your time loss should probably be better. So that's maybe a means to an end versus just the end itself that we should be thinking of. But in my experience, taking the time to just relax and be present has led to me achieving the things that I previously, in my hustle, say that's what I want to go do.
Is that dance, is that, "Hey, when can I step back?" Trusting that then it will lead to that? Because that's scary, right? And that's where fear comes in of, if I'm in my 30s and I take maternity leave, will I be behind? Or if I have children, will I be behind my peers? The answer is yes, in the regards where I've seen some of my friends elevate themselves in their careers, and
Hmm.
yet then I look at my 2 precious children and I'm like, "I'm so grateful for you," right? And so it becomes then comparison or other things, and when I come back to this dance of what's important to me, some of the self reflection that we're talking about, of whether it be spiritual or cognitive, how can I think about this? What do I value most? And am I in alignment with that? Because if I'm in alignment with it right now, I can still strive to what I'm going to become. However, I can slow down in the here and now and not be a crazy mom, like not lose my in front of my kids or that sort of thing. Cause I'm like, hey, I will get to that place of my job and what I want to do. It might take longer, but actually I'm going to have a more fulfilled life, and what I bring to the table will benefit me in ways that I didn't even know 5 years ago or 10 years ago. And if I would have asked my 21-year-old self, "Hey, where will you be at 35?" Podcast was not on there. Like
Yeah. Amen.
working remote, also not on there.
Yeah.
Being a mom of 2, questionable, right? Like being married to the man that I am, not on there. And we've walked that life with each other and stuff. And so I think about that even, where I'm like, I am living a life that I didn't even know, and it's sweet and it's so good. And if I would have said, "Hey, I have to have this, 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 and this by the time I'm 35," I might have missed out on
Yeah.
some of the things I have now, right? So there's also that dance of trust, saying, I'm scared that I don't know what's to come, and yet only time will tell what is to come. And I'm now living my life, the dreams that I had as a 20-year-old.
Yeah. So I actually look at this, it's a similar but different exercise. And I kind of do it in the reverse, which is I think about the scenarios that I encounter now in situations, work, as a parent, as a husband, and I do a rewind of where I was when I started on that thing. And what it looks like, it's really cool to see the progression. For instance, how did I react as a dad for the first time with a newborn that didn't sleep? What was my reaction? How did I show up there? I can assure you it's much better now than it was then. And it was the same amount of sleep loss, maybe a little bit less. Okay, maybe I got more sleep this time around. But like that is reassuring from looking back at where I was to where I am now. Certainly as a husband, I think about the ways in which I showed up during certain moments with Miriam back then versus now, the things that we used to fight about back then versus now, it's like laughable, right? It's like,
Yes. Yes.
like wouldn't even cross our mind these days. So I do a similar thing, which is not necessarily thinking about, did I envision where I am now back then, but taking comfort and seeing how much I've progressed across different aspects of my life. And then also having the knowledge, believing that that's going to continue to progress. Like the
Yeah.
progression from where I was to now should look the same from now to into the future.
And why wouldn't it? Or in Special Olympics, I was just talking to, his name's Chris. He's one of Nick's good friends. He'll be on here on Friday, and he does Special Olympics. And we went to the gala, and they have an amazing statement, and it's, let me succeed or let me win. And if not, may I be brave in the pursuit. And I
Mm,
love that, because it's like this podcast or my job or whatever it may be, my children, I pray and I hope and I'm committed to seeing them grow to be the most healthy people I could hope for. Or this podcast, I hope it takes off because it's got good content that really creates opportunities for people to live a life well.
yeah.
However, if it doesn't, and the success isn't there, may I still be brave in that pursuit? I love that like stance of can we make that happen? And so that's coming up as you're sharing that, like, let's see where this goes.
I think of this in two ways of the becoming part, which
Mhm.
is as I think about my experience and I look back on it, becoming who I am, some of it was just a lot of it was just putting in the hour, like the 10,000 hours, right? So the work professionally, this work scenarios that I'm in now versus when I started my career, those in hindsight, like easy now, right? No, think I'm solving harder, bigger problems now. And that just comes from being in it for 40 hours a week for years and years. Same thing with aspects of being a husband. It's just being in it for 24/7 for some year for years and years. I do think that there are ways though to invest in becoming. So like that looks like different things. And right now my wife and I are taking a class through our church that is it's called emotionally healthy relationships. And certainly the things that I've learned are putting me on a trajectory to be a little bit better version of myself than if I haven't taken this. I may have landed at those same things, probably would have taken a little bit more time through self-discovery. So I think there is a balance here, right? Of having trust that you're going to become who you want to be or a better version of yourself just by virtue of doing life. And then also picking your head up and your eyes forward and saying, okay, what do I value and how do I get better at it? And then going and pursuing that. So that could be a course. It could be what you prioritize to read or what your media digest looks like. There's any number of things that can be put to use. And like my wife pushes me in this regard, which is great. Maybe I tend towards to just master what's right in front of like just keep doing, but picking my head up and saying like, what do I value and how do I get better at the thing that I value is I have found to expedite the process of becoming.
And do you feel like in that pursuit of the rote memorization or one step in front of the other, that you have seen that arc consistently of just showing up for yourself? I am better today than I was yesterday. Would you say that that's pretty linear or that that's true in each sector of your life as you show up for the 10,000th time? Or would you say it varies depending on, yeah, what season of life you're in as you reflect on your own life?
Well, good question. I think progress across all of it, different pace based on where I am in life, what the season of life, you know. Yeah, look, carving out a 60-hour work week with 3 kids, not as easy to do relative to 0 kids. So I think it looks different, but progress across the board, it's just how fast it climbs. How about you?
I think in my early 20s, and I was someone that was like, let me go to Guatemala. Let me figure out who I want to be when I grow up. I'm still thinking that. However, I'm more content in who I am now than I was as a 20-year-old. And that's not saying that I like struggled as a 20-year-old to figure out life or that I had some horrific things. There were challenges for sure. And I did walk through some trauma. But overall, like, I think I like how you said progress across the board, however, different season or different pace for each one. And I think that that's maybe it is like, man, when I think back of where I was as a 21-year-old again, trying to figure out how to heal some wounds, living in Guatemala. What do I want to be when I grow up? To now, I'm so thankful that I did the work of becoming. I'm so thankful that I learned how to be content with myself and that dance of I'm content with myself and also I want to grow.
Yeah.
And so that's just something that I like how you said that, or it's really resonating with me of I want to figure out that progress or continue to say, I'm content with who I am, or my value doesn't come whether I take one step or 20 steps quickly in front of myself. And yet, how do I continue to say, what do I want to pursue? Where am
Sure.
I fulfilled? How can I serve those around me? How can I love people well? And also how can I take some respite for myself in this game of life, right? Because by the time we get to retirement, that's the highest rate of suicide. And one of the heartbeats of mine is to
Wow.
eradicate our world from suicide. But because by the time that people are retired, it's I'm no longer needed in the workplace.
Mm,
I'm no longer needed in the family space. Hopefully, I'm wanted in one of the 2.
yeah.
And that's a hard thing to settle with. And so being in our 30s now, it's like, how can I continue to build that curiosity? How can I continue to build that self-love, that purpose now? So then again, by my 10,000th step or adventure when I am 65 or sometime around there, that I can say, okay, I still believe in my last quarter of life that it's worth living and it's worth living well.
Yeah. I mean, look, making work your idol for 50 years seems like not a great course of action, but it is hard. It's easy to do. it's easy to fall into that place. And then you have it pulled out from under you, what's left.
Yeah. And it takes so much of our time, right? So there's identity even in that. And that's not a bad thing. Again, that correlation, because it's proximity. And so I think that that's what I'm learning more. When I originally wrote this, it was a versus, it was being versus becoming. And do we idolize one more than the other? And I
Hmm.
think it's actually that dance of the cadence and balance of the and there of I am who I am. And also I'm committed to becoming more of who I want to be a productive member of society, my community, my family, myself, even, and getting to know myself. So, anything else that you have? Otherwise, I'll move us into 60 seconds to centered and then we can sign off.
I I think the last thing I'll add is that I have found retreat in my life to be even outside of church or like really in touch with my spirituality, just finding retreat to be really helpful to figure out what I actually do care about and to set my sights on how I'm going to prioritize that. It's in the daily, not picking my head up and not thinking about these things that if I were to continue, I'm sure I'd be a better version of myself. Taking a time, take 3 days a week to relax, think about, and my mind eventually will just go to what do I want to do next? What do I want to add to who I am? And so I encourage it. I don't do enough of it, but when I do, it's very helpful.
As you're sharing that, what's coming up is this idea of creating space in 2025, 2026 to say, I have enough space and capacity to become curious, to build, to see what comes my way. What are the opportunities that I can then re-engage with? Because I'm actually saying, let me have this space to breathe and see what's speaking to me or what's coming up for me. But
Great.
gosh, John, as you're sharing that, I'm like, okay, in 2026, as we build out some of these other ones, what does it look like respite? What does it look like to retreat? And re emphasizing over and over again, whether it makes it into the podcast right now or not, is how do men retreat and retreat well?
Hmm.
And with healthy habits, whether that be fishing, whether that be waking up every morning at 5 to be fulfilled at the gym, or whether that be a pour over,
Yeah.
right? Because that meets the needs of saying, "Hey, I am worth this extra couple of dollars, and, like, the money will sort itself out, but I'm worth this time.
Yeah.
This actually matters."
I think of retreat as like 24 hours or more.
Okay.
Truly take, there's we've talked about rituals and rhythms to energize us throughout the week or the month or even the year. I think of retreat as stepping away from the environment that you're in for 24 hours or more. And it does not start with, I'll tell you how retreat does not start effectively for me is waking up and walking into a conference room or in a room. It involves walking outdoors somewhere. Is the
Yeah.
first thing to do is to figure out how to shake the headspace that you came into. So we can talk more about that, but those are my headline on it.
All right. Retreat, foreshadowing right here. We'll see what comes, but I'm in it. I'm in it to win it for men's minds. And as soon as you said that, I got the giggles because I'm like, every person listening, and we're going into a retreat here. And then you open a conference room. It just is so comical because that's the last thing
Or,
that someone would call a retreat.
or pulling out the notepad and pencil. It doesn't start there for me. Got to get
Okay.
out,
Get outside.
get my wiggles out outside with some fresh air.
So love that. I had a different 60 seconds to centered, but as you shared on your reflection back to the growth of who you were as a dad first, and then to dad number 3, still the same dad, but 3 children later, reflecting back to who I was when I was 21. And exercise that I do often on retreats, actually, but it's just a fun thing, especially as the year comes to an end, as we're in holidays, we can have a lot of grief, a lot of heartache. And it's praising the younger self. And what it says is it's a letter. So it can be on a scrap piece of paper. It can just be thought out. But 60 seconds to centered is saying, hey, Beck, writing to my younger 21-year-old self. I go back to that place because that's when a really some awful things happened and also
Yeah.
some beautiful healing. And then kind of like the doors opened and I was able to live now where I'm at. But writing back, and it could be to my 13-year-old self, or it could be, hey, John, remember before you were a dad? Look where you are now. Remember the things you feared, how you dreaded the late nights. And look now, there are 3 kids with late nights, sleepy eyes, and yet you're still crushing it at work. You're still making pour overs every morning. You're still showing up for your family on holidays and traveling or whatever it is. But it's this letter, 60 seconds. It turns into much longer often because then it's like, oh, wait, I want to thank myself, or I want to go down memory lane talking about nostalgia of like, oh, look where we've come. So it's a letter back to our past to say like, hey kid, look where you've been. So I do it with my students at DU from the start of the semester till the end, and then reflecting back of like,
That's
Remember when we were
cool.
big-eyed and, like, terrified of what was gonna happen this semester to, like, "Dang, I'm gonna be an awesome counselor and can crush it and stuff." 60 seconds to centered is write yourself a letter, thanking yourself, being your hype girl, guy, really reflecting on living out the dream that you had hoped you would live, or reflecting back and saying, "Look where we've been and look what we've done since then."
I love it. Great
Cool.
idea. Well, you've written half my letter for me, so thank you.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
Just
just
listen
go
to
put
this
the
and then
finishing
copy and
touches on.
paste. No, love that. I mean, you could do that with sport, right? Like you talked about sport, listen to me as if I don't know any sports.
Go sport ball.
I mean, you could even do that of like, "Hey, remember when I played football? Okay, I'm no longer playing football, but I just ran my fastest mile that I have in decades." Right? Like that's a win. Even though that seems minor, that's a little like another notch on my belt to say I'm doing life as best as I can in my 30s.
Thank you for gassing me up.
Yes, we need that. The world is so divided. We need that. And you are worth it. Guys are worth it. Gals are worth it. Our kids are worth it. All right. Well, thank you, listeners, for being on and for joining us. It's always a joy for John and I to get to chat with each other. This is another wrap of He Said, She Said.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye. See y'all.